Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Gault with United Network News, and we've got a real treat for you guys today. We are completely mixing things up. We are changing the format, and you guys, I have a really, really special guest. So joining me today, live on the show, is Kim Goguen from the Global Intelligence Agency. Hello, Miss Kim.
Hello, Miss Sunny. It's been a long time since we've been together, huh?
I know. Oh, this is so fun. So you guys, Kim is the first guest we've had on the show. We've played sound bites from Kim, of course, those of you guys who have been listening for a while. And she's given us a lot of great intel, but I've never had a guest on the show. Now, I have to tell you guys, there's a little bit of a twist to today's episode. Kim is our first guest we've ever had on the show, and she's also going to be our last guest. And the reason for that is we are making some huge changes at UNN. And there's a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So I asked Kim to come on the show today to talk about those changes. And added bonus is that she is going to give us an intel report live. And this is kind of going to be a transition for us because we are actually going to be fading out the rundown. So this will be the last episode of the rundown, but I don't want you guys to worry because we are just changing up how we're doing things. And we're actually going to be giving you a lot more great content more frequently. So Kim, let's talk about this a little bit more, right? Because so much has happened since your last GIA report and things that are happening at UNN.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so excited. We've been working together very closely on new workflows for things and coming up with new ideas and really just talking to you, our members and people of all different age groups as to why they watch our news and why they don't watch our news and what they like about the GIA report and what they don't like about the GIA report. So we kind of structured this new format, or all of the new formats that are coming out, pretty much around that. Honestly, it's been all about you. Who's listening to us and our viewers. I guess not viewing for this report, but viewing in the future.
That's right.
So some things that you've kind of already noticed that have been starting is we started giving UNN a little bit of a facelift, making the videos easier to find in the future. We're also kind of changing the colors more to meet our color scheme. It's a little lighter, easy to use. The other thing you've probably noticed is that, I'm in the community a lot more often. For those of you that don't know that might be listening to this, we actually have a community chat room within our apps that people can communicate with myself directly and with Sunny directly. We're going to be adding another chat to that where you can basically post things you'd like to hear in the next GIA report. It's going to be called something different. But you'll be able to communicate with me directly. You'll be able to put your suggestions. Hey, here's something that's showing up in the news. Can you talk about this? Can you tell us what's really going on? And that way the news is really going to be news your way. The GIA reports are going to be GIA reports your way. And we'll have a lot more communication with all our members. So really, we're making this what you've always wanted it to be, or what you will be telling us you want it to be. So
Yeah.
very, very exciting.
Yeah, and we've always wanted to do this, but the key was how do you do this and present it in a way so that, Kim, you're not just combing through messages and messages of previous reports that you've released, or, because people have great ideas and they'll post it like in the comment section of a video, but it's so hard to aggregate that information and put it together in something that we can use. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create these areas where you guys can participate. We can take that feedback that you're giving us and we can implement it. And the chat that Kim was just talking about that's available on our app, if you're a member, you can access it or you can sign up for a free trial. But you can also access, and I think sometimes when people hear the word app, they think you literally have to have your phone. But also through the website, unitednetwork.earth, you can also access that chat. And Kim, I know so many people have really loved the updates that you've been given. We've been talking about it on the rundown a lot as well. But like I said, it's all about having that designated place so we can gather this information and then be able to, like you said, create a show or whatever that's specifically what people are looking for.
Absolutely. We're also adding a lot of search filters too. And we're going to be even going through old GIA reports and pulling out key information, cutting that specific bit of information into a bite-sized piece. So they might be 10 minutes, they could be 20 minutes long, where you can actually just pull up, you can say, when did Kim say the Federal Reserve is changing? And then it will pull up all the videos about the Federal Reserve, and then you'll just be able to watch those bite-sized pieces. So this is something that we've been lacking in a lot. Also, we're going to be adding new filters for our field messenger reports. So if you are looking specifically for reports from the African continent, the Middle East, wherever it is, you can just type into the search bar, I'd like some more information on Zimbabwe, or if it's world news, is there an event like the Canadian wildfires? You'll be able to just type that in on the top, and it will pull up all the reports about the Canadian wildfires. And even if Sunny did a report about the wildfires, that will also show up. So again, it's going to be so much easier to search for the information you're really, really looking for. The process of all of these changes is going to happen in 3 phases. So some of these things will be completed by the end of August, some of them will be completed by the end of September, and some of them will be completed by the end of October. But with some new softwares we've been introducing, it's going to be a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster than probably I even am aware of at this moment in time. So we're so excited for these changes because it's what everybody has been asking us for. What report did you say that in? Where's that information?
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, it's going to be huge.
It's going to be awesome for people to be able to just search for, okay, when did Kim talk about the Abraxas? When did she talk about this? What has she said about the Federal Reserve? To be able to type that in, because I see those comments all the time. And thank you to everyone in our community. When someone posts that, there are some of you guys that are just on it. And you know, I don't know how you know this stuff, this innate knowing that you guys have, but you're like, oh, that was this report. Well, you shouldn't have to do that, right? We should have something set up so that you can easily search whatever it is you're looking for. And Kim, you mentioned our field messengers. We talk a lot about our field messengers on the rundown. We tell you guys all about the various stories that they've released throughout the week. And another added benefit that I love, that I think our field messengers are going to love, is that they will have the ability, whenever, if you guys wanted to become a field messenger tomorrow, you could do this. And, all the reports that you release. So it's not just about me or Kim, but if you are releasing reports, through our website and our app, then people can search up your reports. And I know some of our field messengers, this has been a really great benefit, because when they go out and they're like, hey, I want to do a story on this, and someone's like, well, who are you? And they're like, oh, well, I'm a field messenger with United Network News. I know at least one of our field messengers literally takes our app and shows them reports on her phone, which is great. But right now it's a challenge to do that, right? She's going to have to go through some hoops and hurdles until she can find one of her reports. But, through this new way that we're enabling search, she'll just be able to type in her name and all of her reports are going to pop up. How amazing is that?
Absolutely. And, right now our field messengers are usually by first name and location. And that will continue. We don't need everybody to give your last name or anything like that. But chances are of us having 2 Marys from Idaho, as an example, or 3 Freds from South Africa are fairly slim. But in the case that they are, we'll even have a way to fix that. But you can just go into that search bar, type in, okay, I'm Mary and I want to show people all the reports I've done. Can't find them because there's no way to search for them. Now you'll just be able to type in Mary from Idaho, and every one of your reports is going to come up. Everything you've ever done, every report you've ever done will also show up there. Now, if you've also even been in a news broadcast in the past, you'll be able to pull that up. But, Sunny, in the future, our news is going to change.
That's right. Everything's changing. Everything literally is changing, you guys. So should I talk a little bit about that? You want me to talk just a little bit about the news and how we're changing the news?
Well, we absolutely should, because by next week,
Yeah.
everybody's going to see it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So, okay. So you guys know, my background is in traditional news and, that's what I went to school for. And when I came on board with UNN, the idea was to kind of recreate what we were seeing already out there. We thought that might give us, a level of, I don't know if respect is the right word, but people would take us more seriously if we looked more like regular news. But things have changed. And you guys know, probably most of you listening to this podcast right now, you are not watching regular news. In fact, if you see something that looks like regular news, if you're anything like me, you run the other way because we know the content that they're putting out there is not accurate, that there are narratives behind all of this, and we do not trust it. So we had this realization after talking with you guys, and honestly, Kim, we'll talk about this later, but I really feel like something truly shifted in general energy and everything like that to enable these changes that we're talking about, because it has been so profound on our end for UNN and implementing these things. Like, we are going like gangbusters. It is happening so fast and things are aligning in ways that I can't fully explain, other than we know we're on the right track. And, this is going to happen for everyone. But for the news specifically, we are not going to be doing 30-minute long newscasts anymore. We are not trying to recreate what has been out there forever. We have listened to you guys, and what's most important to us is that you are able to get the information you want to watch when you want to watch it. And so we are dividing the news up into bite-sized chunks, I would say, all of our content that we're going to be putting out. And Kim will talk more about the GIA report and the changes coming to that. But for the news, we're not branding it as United Network News anymore. We are launching, I would say that this is kind of a new thing for me, you guys, because in news, you're kind of taught that you're not the story. That's what they teach you in journalism school. You're not the story. And we're switching things up because we're not doing news the traditional way. We're basically saying, for me personally, I can tell my story. I can be more real. I can say, listen, I have gone through working at a regular news station, multiple stations, right? I know what happens in those newsrooms. I know how often, despite the positive intentions of reporters and producers, how their ideas just get shut down. I've seen how they've been asked to say certain things that they didn't necessarily agree with. And we want to remove that, right? We want this to be just about the truth and getting that information out there. And so we're not doing that type of format anymore. We'll be launching a new show. We still have some title stuff that we're going through right now, but it'll be a show and about myself, about giving you guys the real news, and it'll be in bite-sized chunks, so you won't have to watch a 30-minute episode in order to understand the news for the day. And on the back end, this really helps us out a lot as well, because it takes so much effort. You guys would be amazed if we went through it, because Kim and I, we have done this over the last week. We have gone through our workflow of what it takes to put out just one newscast, a 30-minute newscast, and all the hands that are involved in this and our volunteers. Like, it is incredible, but it's not efficient. And so what we're trying to do is take that, make it efficient, and we're going to be presenting this more in a podcast format. It will be video-based. Right now, I know we're just doing audio, but it will be video-based. And I'll basically have my own show about doing the news and what's happening in the news and some of the stories behind the news. And Kim, what I'm really excited about is it's not just going to be reading stuff. In fact, I'm hoping to not have any real scripts at all. I'm hoping that most of this is just bullet points, and that we are interviewing people, that we're engaging with other people and their conversations, other people that are producing content out there and revealing the truth. And it'll just be more in that more relaxed podcast setting. And it'll be bite-sized information. We'll be releasing it so that, one video is just about one topic, right? So if it is about wildfires in Canada, that video is just going to be about wildfires in Canada. It's not going to be that and field messenger reports and everything else. And for the field messengers, your reports are just going to be your reports.
And all of them now.
All of them. Everything is bite-sized chunks of individual pieces of content. And Kim, maybe you can talk more about how that's going to look on the app so people will be able to access it. Yeah, and know what they're looking for, basically.
Yeah, what we're going to do, instead of having a big, long, or 3 big, long, I should say, newscasts for the week, what we're going to do is we're going to take all those bite-sized pieces that Sunny's just talked about, and we're going to put it in one collection. So you'll be able to see, when you open our app, you'll be able to see the weekly digest or the weekly pulse. We haven't quite decided on that. And maybe if you have some thoughts and ideas, you can post it in the community chat and we'll pick them up and see whatever, what the majority want to do. So this is really, like I said, this is news for you your way. So once you open that collection, all the videos for that whole week will be in there, and it will create a playlist for you. So the video will, one video after another video after another video will just play, but you can skip over certain videos. You can just listen to part of the GIA report, what it's going to become. We'll talk about that in a second. But you'll be able to pick and choose which pieces, and most of these pieces will be less than 20 minutes long. So it's going to be easy to digest when you're driving to work in the morning, or, it doesn't matter how much time you actually have. You can cut that time down by just getting the information that you want. And the thing about this weekly report is everything all the field messenger reports that come in during that week are going to be in this section. If Sunny does an interview like we used to do on the New Earth, it's going to be something a little bit different. And it's going to change too. But any kind of interviews that we've done during the week, we now have some new software we're using. So it's real super easy to just get a just-in report, do a quick interview, upload it. It all edits right there in the software that we now have. And it's kind of streamlining this so we can bring you more videos. So when you open, for example, next week, well, not next week, it'll be the week after, the weekly pulse or the weekly digest, you'll see, you might even see at the beginning of the week 10 videos. But if there's something new, something breaking, new field messenger reports come in, new interviews that Sunny does throughout the week, those will also appear underneath this one section. So you can keep an eye out for push notifications if you haven't signed up for them and you do have the app on your phone or your device. Because there'll be more videos added. So we might start out with 5 or 10 things for the week, but then we're going to add anything that comes in through the week too. So this gives us a lot more flexibility to get those breaking news reports out without all of the fluff, because it's going to free up our editing teams and other people that work with our field messengers and with the news to do something else.
Yeah.
And those reports will also be categorized by country now. Also, you'll be able to search by, I like Mary in Idaho's reports. I want to see what she's saying this week if you happen to miss it. But the Weekly Pulse is basically a compilation of what's happening around the world this week.
Yep. And that's
Nobody
another
wants
reason.
to watch long broadcasts anymore. Nobody watches CNN for hours anymore.
No, they don't. And, you guys may be wondering, well, why are you phasing out the rundown? Because the Pulse is going to be, essentially when we created the rundown, it was more about how can we give people an overview of all the content, because there's so much content that's coming out in various formats throughout the week. How do we give you guys an idea of all those little things so you can go back and watch whatever you want to watch or listen to whatever you want to listen to. So the rundown is no longer needed because we've got this place on the app that is automatically going to break all that stuff down for you. And all you have to do is go to this one section, and you don't want to watch a video? Don't watch that one video. Skip it. Go to the next one. So that's why this show is being phased out. But there's a lot of great content that is coming in its place. And Kim, I think this is a good time. I think I have a little thing here. Can you hear this? Let's see. I have a little drum roll sound effect there.
How cute.
All right, let's talk about what the GIA is becoming and how people are going to be able to access all that great information moving forward.
Sunny, do you want to give them just a brief overview on something we've been working on?
Hey, as much info as you want to drop, I'm fine with. So, yeah. Well, I'll basically give a quick overview, Kim, and then you can kind of fill in some of the
Well,
blanks.
I was thinking we could just kind of show them in that little short video you made, maybe.
Well, we're still tweaking it. It's still
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
using a lot of different software. You guys, that's another thing. Like even our communication software is changing. Everything is changing behind the scenes at UNN.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is going to be changing, and because we're using different software to create it, and we're working on logos and various things. Let's leave that, Kim, as a surprise because I'm real excited about that. Let's leave that, and
Okay,
they're not gonna.
okay.
This is an audio podcast, so they're not really going to be able to see much anyway, right? They would basically be able to hear it, and that's
Oh,
it.
okay.
But let's talk about the series and how it's going to be kind of separated out because, one of the things, guys, and this has always kind of been a challenge, but, when we give you this information, we're giving you the real news, real information, but not everybody is ready to hear everything. Everybody's on their own journey. And if you try to send someone the GIA report now, they're going to look at you like you have three heads. Let's just be honest. Unless they're already subscribed to UNN, they're going to be like, what in the world and what cult are you in? And that's just the nature of where we're at today. We have been lied to for so long about so many things that nobody knows what's real. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is break up the content that Kim gives us so that we can share it with the people that we care about, because you give it to them all at once and it's going to be a challenge for most people, right? And so the GIA report, we're not going to be calling it the GIA report anymore. We're calling it Declassified. And the reason behind that is that's exactly what Kim does every single time she does a report. She is giving you the truth behind what's going on out there and separating essentially fact from fiction. And we're doing that on different levels. So we've got 3 different versions of Declassified that's coming out. We have one that's going to be called Declassified Behind the Headlines, and that's the headlines that Kim goes over and breaks down, okay, this is what they're saying, but this is really what's going on. We've got something called Declassified Breaking the Matrix, and that's going to go just a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, talking about the matrix, talking about control structures, and then we have Declassified Beyond the Veil, and that is more of talking about the restoration and what Source is doing and all the positivity and amazing things that are changing on this planet and how it's being restored. And I guess one of the really cool things that we're doing is this isn't just going to be Kim, because again, we're listening to you guys and what you're saying, and I have been seeing this on the chat for a while. We were just trying to figure out how to make this work because Kim's schedule in the past has been really busy. But if we can free up her time by working on these workflows and making things run smoother, that frees up a lot of time that Kim was spending doing other things. So that's why we're implementing these new systems to make us more efficient, which frees up time for Kim and what we're going to be doing here. So Kim will still have the ability to do her own reports, but as much as possible, I'm going to be joining Kim as well. So that makes it easier for Kim because you guys, it's tough to just do a monologue about something. If you've ever done a speech or, any kind of recording where it's just you talking, right? Okay, see?
Oh,
Exactly.
God.
You could just
That's
hear it
why
in your
all the
voice.
notes. 10 hours, 10 hours of notes, and I'm feverishly writing everything that happened that week. And, it's so long. It takes me so long. And then I'm going to record for another 2 to 3 hours, which honestly, it probably takes you guys, if your life is as busy or even a quarter of as busy as mine is, it probably takes you a couple of days to at least even go through it. And then you got to go back and listen to parts that you just can't find.
Yep.
When did you
Yep.
say that? What time marker was that? So we tried adding transcripts, and that was a good transition for a little while where you could at least see the minute markers and what we're talking about. But now we're even going to go through all the old GIA reports, make them searchable, keyword searchable, even if you don't want, we're going to try to separate them as best we can behind the headlines. So when I would normally say, well, let's start with the real news, or what's really going on in the news. And I would cover topics that some of them you suggested, and some of them are things that I wanted to point out for that week. So we have a lot of options now with the new softwares that we have to just cut that GIA report up into bite-sized pieces, 10-minute chunks, 20-minute chunks. Some of those older reports, it's kind of telling a long story about woo-woo and then, 30 minutes of news. And, so they might be a little longer than our new reports.
Yeah.
But all in all, you'll still be able to search for that information. Type in Kim talking about the Federal Reserve as an example, or Kim talks about the Abraxas, and every report that contains the Abraxas will come up automatically.
Yep. Yep. And then Kim gets extra time so she can take a shower and join us. And this is
Showers.
yeah.
Wow.
What a concept. What a
Yeah.
concept, right? And this is going to be video based, you guys, as much as possible. Kim is planning to be on camera. And when we do stuff together, she'll be on camera as well. So you'll get to see Kim a lot more because she's going to have more time in her schedule, because all of this craziness of 13 hours, Kim, to prep for, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I know you like people. That's why you do what you do. So you being able to talk to me or talk to someone else in an interview type format or conversational format, podcast style, which is what all these are going to be, is going to help you so much. And it's going to be more relatable. And you guys, my role in this is really to help clarify things. So we're going to actually practice this in just a bit because Kim has some intel that she's going to give us. And I'm hoping to kind of be just a little bit. I'm hoping to be that voice for you guys, right? That's asking Kim maybe to clarify, or hey, can you give us a follow up on this or whatever? Because Kim does a really good job of giving us the information, but there's so much that I know a lot of you are like, well, wait, last week she talked about this. What's going on with that now? So I view that as my role in this, is just to ask clarifying questions and figure out where we're going, with all this, and also to make it easier on Kim. So was there anything else, Kim, that we want to talk about the changes, or are we ready to actually get into the nitty-gritty of some really juicy intel?
And well, yeah, just a few more things.
Okay.
Lots
I got
happening
excited.
here.
I got
Yeah,
excited.
absolutely. I'm excited too. I know you want to hear about it. I want to just, I want to just tell you too, because there's so much misinformation out there. So we're going to kind of start with some regular news and then go into all the changes that have been happening, not only at UNN, but around the world. So we'll do that in a quick second. So I just wanted to just reiterate real quick that you're going to see some new categories coming up in our app. And it's going to be coming fast and furious now. So we're also going to categorize things not only by here's the GIA or here's the pulse. So the GIA report will also appear in the pulse, but it will also appear, it's not going to be called GIA anymore. It will also appear under a GIA section. But then in addition to that, you will also be able to find it under behind the headlines, will be under world news, what's going on around the world. So that little clip is going to be in there. You'll also be able to do the same with field messenger reports. So say someone does a report about going on a trip or traveling. It'll be under the travel section. It'll be also under their name. It'll also be under their area or region of the world in which the report is coming from, or they've traveled to. So we have the ability now to categorize this in so many ways. So no matter how you hit that search button, you'll be able to find it. Now, when it comes to phenomena, aliens, spiritual, you'll also be able to find the GIA Report spiritual stuff and maybe phenomena and aliens and simulations underneath those respective sections. So if you go to that category, you'll be able to see the GIA in those two places. Plus, you'll be able to see if I give some world news about what's happening in the Middle East, that'll show up in the Middle East. And the same thing goes for Sunny, too. If she does a report about those types of things, you'll be able to see it right there in all those different sections. Same with our field messengers. Now they're going to be able to find you. It's not just going to be one long category and you don't know who did the report and you don't know, maybe you saw a clip of it for 2 minutes in the news and you want to watch the whole thing. You can't find it.
Right.
Now you're going to be able to find it. So I just wanted to reiterate that you might see the GIA report split up into different places because each one of these collections are going to be a playlist. So if you want to show the weekly news to your friends and you might want to not have the GIA report, real deep dives in there, then you can do that because you just go to the world news section. That will be a playlist unto itself, and you can just play that specific video. Maybe you just want some behind the headline stuff to kind of ease them into the world that you've come to understand a little bit. Absolutely. So now it's going to make it much easier for you to do that. So the next thing that the app is going to be able to do between now and October is it's actually going to pay attention to what you're watching. So it's going to basically say, well, if you like this, you're going to like this. And therefore, our field messengers might get a little bit more exposure, so to speak, on the app because Sunny might have talked about the wildfires, but quite frankly, we've got 4 reporters right now that have given us live information from Canada that have talked about the wildfires, and I guarantee you none of you have been able to find it.
Yeah.
So this is coming up as well, where you'll actually have playlists that are suggested for you based on things you like to watch. If we do some health information or, maybe we're interviewing a doctor about something new that's coming out or a new technology, all of these things are going to be coming up in rapid succession in the near future. So we have been, let's just say, inspired by maybe, Source itself could be, to make these changes now, get our house in order so that we can be prepared for what is going to happen. As the world changes right now, people are going to start looking for that other information. They are going to want to know why I feel this way, what's happening, why is everybody all of a sudden different? What's going on here? And you'll be able to ease your friends and family into these little bite-sized chunks. And, maybe the next week they'll come back and say, I've been having a really bad headache, or I can't believe how much energy I all of a sudden have, and I need less sleep. What's happening? And then you can say, do you really want to know? And then you can just point out beyond the veil in there, and it will tell them exactly what all these changes are about. So that's going to be really exciting for us too. Our social media is going to change. You probably have noticed we didn't put the old GIA report up on our YouTube channel. Quite frankly, there's somebody already copying it to Rumble, so it's up there somewhere. But the reason why we didn't is because we're going to change our social media as well. Pretty much social media has kind of gone into these little short videos. That's what people want to see. The biggest problem that people have had is you can't find anything anywhere. You got to, if you want to find information about, from the war in Iran to, what are black pyramids in Alaska, you've got to go search through. It'll come up in your TikTok feed or your X or Twitter feed, as to some of the information some of the time. And then you've got to search for the next topic you want to know. And then you've got to go through 10 fancy dances and 45 influencers trying to sell you something. It's just so random. The search engines are terrible. And then, God forbid, someone actually says, like on TikTok, the CHINA word, because it'll just cut you right out. It'll cut you right off.
Oh, yeah, you're out at that point. Forget it. Forget it.
You're absolutely out. So we're going to change up the way we do social media. So bear with us. This should probably take about another week or so. And then we will be able to tell you all of the things that are changing and how to best understand that as we're posting, other videos and news and even shorter shorts, which all is possible now because of this new software. It's just literally, if Sunny does a 20-minute interview or news report, it will cut it up into bite-sized pieces for our social media. And then now you can just scroll through a bunch of shorts if that's what you want to do. If you want to watch the whole thing, you go to the Pulse.
Yep. Yep. Now, I know you guys, we've given you a ton of information and your head might be spinning a little bit, but we just wanted to let you know, because we're so excited about all this stuff. We wanted you to know what was coming. We wanted you to know why there was a little bit of a break between the last GIA report and what we're doing now. It's because our team is working nonstop on this. And the energy is palpable. It's just really, really exciting. And as we start to implement this, some of the stuff we said, if you're like, wow, that was a lot of information, you'll start to see it on the site. I'm a visual person, so as Kim's talking, I'm like trying to visualize exactly what she's saying. This is going to be our goal is to make this as intuitive as possible. So you don't have to like figure things out. It should just be, well, that makes sense. And, I just want to watch this one video. I'm just going to, click on this one video. Or, hey, I'm interested in news from Sweden. So let's see all the field messengers that are reporting out of Sweden. We just want to simplify this so you can get the content that you want, because we're not the crazy social media channels out there and the YouTubes and the Rumble that have their own agenda and are just feeding you guys whatever, they want their algorithms to do. It should really be based on what you want to watch and not have to sit down for hours at a time to do it. Well, I mean, you can binge watch any content you want. We're not going to stop you from doing that. But if you also just want, just that one story, that's what you're going to get. So that's our goal. That's our goal, is to make it as simple as possible and for you guys to be able to share it as easily as possible.
And also, just quickly, we also have updated our apps in the App Store. And so one of the new features that everybody's kind of buzzing about is these push notifications you can now get. Now, I just wanted to say, if you go into the application on your phone, whether that's an iOS or an Android, you can actually choose your settings on what you want to be notified about. And you can even pause settings and then turn them back on later. So if you are a member of the community and you want to get everything everybody posted, you can do that. If you just want things the admins post, like myself or Sunny or Natalie, you can get those too. And if there's a new video that is added to the Pulse, let's call it the Pulse for now, because we haven't quite 100% decided on that yet. But, as videos are added every day, you can get those too. There's no real reason for us to continue much longer staying on Telegram, simply because how many notifications do you really need? If you are reliant on Telegram, you can do that. If you have the app, you can also get those notifications on your phone. If you feel that we should keep the Telegram because you like getting Telegram notifications, you can. But now that all that is fixed and up and running very well, I don't really see anything stopping us from just telling people when stuff is going to come out.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
So on that note, are you ready?
I am. Let's get to some good intel. So we're going to kick things off with some regular news, right?
Yep. Just regular news to start out and what's going on, because nothing about the news is actually regular now, is it?
That's very true.
So we have the Middle East, and I was going to call this the Iran, war section, because 1 minute we're going to war, 1 minute we're not going to war. There's all this crazy fear out there. Matter of fact, this is even trickling into financial news, because there are people that are not actually traveling to countries that are not even in the Middle East right now. And tourism is down in places like Thailand. And we've also had some reports about people taking summer vacations to Europe. And they're not traveling right now because they don't know if there's going to be a world war because there's so much fear out there. And I can just tell you that they would love to have a world war, but it's probably not going to work out. And with all the changes that are happening, the regular people that may work within or around governments and even in and around intelligence agencies and people on the street, everybody's starting to question really what's really happening. And so a little story about people questioning what's really happening. So, for example, the Iranian president has been demanding constantly for many, many weeks now to meet with the person that we kind of refer to as Khamenei Jr. For those of you that don't know who Khamenei is, just real quick, he was the imam of the Shia Muslim or Islamic community for decades. And an imam is kind of like the Pope is to Catholicism in Christianity. I would say Khamenei was, or the imam is to Islam.
Okay.
Even the Shia and the Sunni groups both believe that this is like their pope, so to speak. So several months back, Khamenei dies, and they decided to appoint his son into the position. So because his name is very long and drawn out, I'm going to call him Khamenei Jr. for purposes of this report. And you can look up information about, more information about who it is and where they're from. But the Iranian president has been looking to have a demanding, because this would be a normal thing. So the imam, being from the religious sector of world control, would normally be meeting with all of the heads of state throughout the Islamic countries, including Malaysia and other places that are Indonesia, which are predominantly Islamic. So he would normally be coordinating just like the Pope coordinates with the United States and the UK and parts of Europe. So it's almost like having a second president.
Yeah.
Based on the majority of people in various countries. So the Iranian president has been asking repeatedly and then eventually demanding that he have a meeting with this new Khamenei Jr., the new imam, because he kind of has suspected and had heard rumors that he's actually dead. So, and that somebody else, somewhere else, has been running the show. And, well, just like popes die 6 months ahead of time, and then they finally tell us about it later, or they throw up a doppelganger or some kind of clone or something like that, just till they can figure out what they're going to do. This guy, so he finally gets the appointment because there was obviously no way to avoid it any longer, and the jig was going to be up. So they blindfolded the president of Iran.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did, actually. This actually came from Agent M, if you remember Agent M from previous reports.
Of course.
Who actually had people that were there when all this was happening. So he was blindfolded, and he was then taken to a place at night in a black-tinted SUV. The meeting between him and Khamenei Jr., which the blindfold stayed on the whole time, they were not allowed to see his face, or where he was actually located. How ridiculous is this? And there was a very short 5 to 10 minute long conversation that occurred. And then this left when apparently the president was eventually returned to his home.
Yeah.
It left him even more suspicious.
Well,
So,
yeah.
mhm.
I mean, come on. Like, these people, honestly, like, who do they think they're kidding with this stuff? They don't show the guy at all. That could have been any kind of voice, whatever, modulator or whatever, messing with us. We know they do this all the time when they put people up there in masks. It's not the real people. They have the technology. You guys have seen the videos out there, right? That it's like, oh, the CIA can do this or whatever. Like, this technology is very real. But when they make it so obvious and stupid, it makes you just scratch your head going, is anyone buying this? So it sounds like the president of Iran didn't really buy the whole spiel.
No, he didn't. He actually demanded that there's another meeting that would occur at his headquarters, where at the Imam headquarters, which is kind of like the Vatican of the Islamic community, and that, where he could actually have a normal meeting like the president of any Islamic country would normally have with the Imam. And that request was adamantly denied. And this just kind of shows you, number one, what we know is there has been a fight, or was a fight, after the Khomeini died as to who was going to be the new imam, because there's a big fight going on behind the scenes between the Bavarian Illuminati and the Sanhedrin, or Jewish Illuminati section, and they've been dueling it out. So this is kind of part of that, because who is actually the person who is the new imam? Who is it? Yeah. Everybody wants to know. All the heads of states are talking about it. Even though the news tells them, oh, this is Junior, it's not actually Junior anymore. And it has gone back and forth, as a matter of fact. So if you don't know, the imam is usually one that would report to the dragon families, who you could say are part of the Chabad or Sanhedrin Illuminati section. On the flip side, you could say that the Pope, as an example, is more of kind of a Bavarian sort of guy. But lately, since they've been fighting so much, the Bavarians have been trying to install their people into places like heads of state. This has been going on for a couple years now. And they've also been trying to install their own people as well in positions of power. So they've already got the Pope, that's where the term Black Pope comes from. And they've already got the, let's just say the Anglican Church, and a very heavy influence in the Orthodox churches in Eastern Europe. And now they're going for the Islamic community. And Khomeini Jr. has been Khomeini Jr. Bavarian Illuminati. Khomeini Jr., not the Bavarian Illuminati. He's actually Chinese. And then he'll go back to, and part of the Dragon family.
Yeah, he's having an identity crisis right now. He doesn't know who he is and who he represents.
And nobody else knows who he is either. So this works, right? But given the fact of how this technique was at this moment, it appears that the Khomeini Jr. that is playing the role is on the Bavarian side. Because doing this whole put a bag on your head thing and take you into the backwoods of God knows where to meet somebody and have a chat for 5 minutes just so you'll shut up kind of, operation really gives me Bavarian vibes, Sonny.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole thing's just so weird,
Mm-hmm. So I know. So other Middle Eastern news, which is also kind of, sort of, but not really in the news, is Iran actually made a deal for $140 billion with the United States military-industrial complex over the last 10 days since we did the last report.
So, okay, hang on, because we know they don't have any money. So when we say that they made a deal, what does that even mean? They're certainly not given actual money or pallets of cash, or what's going on there?
No. So Iran has been, having sanctions and, is not supposed to be selling their oil allegedly and all of this stuff for quite a long time now. And China's been buying Iranian oil for a couple decades now. I even have video footage of them carrying it over the Pakistani border and pretending it's coming from somewhere else. Also, the U.S. has been buying Iranian oil. They'll say they're not, but they really are, even though that they're sanctioned. But that excludes people like the Pentagon, for example, from getting Middle Eastern crude. Same thing is happening throughout the African continent, and the Russians are actually cooperating in part with Iran, processing and refining that oil and sending it to various countries like Russian oil. And everybody knows, that it is not Russian oil. So Iran's got money. Beyond, actually, for those of you that don't know, Iran actually even runs the entire telecommunication system in South Africa. So if you've got a cell phone or you have data and you're in South Africa, you're paying the Iranians, whether you know it or not. So So they're trying by the military industrial complex, we're talking about retired generals that are your power brokers, the war dogs like you would see in the War Dog movie. And you're also talking about people that manufacture or companies that manufacture weapons, such as Lockheed Martin and Airbus, is not American, that's French, but Lockheed Martin, Honeywell, all of the big weapons manufacturers in the United States, from everything from guns to planes to drones, you name it, they make it all. It's a whole cabal we call the military industrial complex, and former generals, retired military people, retired agency people, because there is no such thing as retirement, now become power brokers for the industrial complex. So a meeting occurred towards the end of July, and whereby there was these whole conversations that were taking place about how much money it was going to take just to float the American government till the end of July, and, never mind what's going to happen in August here, and everybody is broke. So they're devising these new and exciting, not so new ways of getting money to keep the Pentagon running, to keep their almost fake, sort of, kind of, not quite a wars running. So Israel's out of money right now. They can't buy any more weapons. The U.S., as it is, as we said in the last report, is basically using stuff that they built in the 1980s. They're actually going through old, retired weapons and seeing what they can pull out of the sandbox in there.
Which is probably dangerous, right? I mean, couldn't these
Yeah,
things
totally.
go off? Yeah.
Oh,
They
totally.
obviously have no regard for anybody's safety or anything. Zero.
Well, and remember, you retire, you become the head of Lockheed Martin, you become, the head of all of these different groups. You're part of that organization, atypically the Bavarians. And it doesn't matter if you run a Ukraine weapons factory or you run a U.S. weapons factory. The fact is, it's all the same. It is a worldwide military industrial complex. In this case, the U.S. is going broke. The U.S. sector of the complex is going broke. They no longer will sell free weapons to Israel or give free weapons to the United States. They need to make some money. So a deal was made so that the U.S. could actually, who brokered the deal, could actually get a little bit of money in their pocket. And Iran gets $140 billion worth of weapons with the cooperation of the current U.S. administration to blow us all up. You can't fight us if you don't actually have a weapon. So we're going to give you some weapons. And then in turn, as part of the same deal, we'll also get some weapons. And now we can actually fight each other some more.
What about the people that are expected to carry out these orders? Is everyone still just, hoping that money comes in on a certain day? Are people still working for free? Because getting the weapons is one thing, but, actually being involved. I mean, these people have to pay bills and stuff, don't they? I don't know. How does that work?
Is that if these people have gotten any kind of money lately from, operatives with GCHQ in the UK or even in the Middle East, and even in the United States, anybody who has gotten even a little bit dripple of money, you're now being paid by Iran, and they know it and they just don't care. It's all black market money at this point. And, I wouldn't call it business as usual. There's still a very real struggle. World wars are very, very expensive, and they're nowhere near collecting enough money at this point to make that world war happen. I mean, you're talking in today's terms in comparison to decades ago when we had World War II. World War II, it might have cost them $1 billion or even a few $100 million a day with all the countries that were engaged in fighting on one side or another of World War II. But nowadays, you're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, if not $1 trillion or more a day just to keep a world war running. Mm-hmm.
Which nobody has. Nobody has that kind of money, no matter what they're saying.
Nope. And we'll talk about that here as we get a little deeper into this report. But there's also some other changes happening in the Middle East, too. For those of you that don't know, you could call the Syrian president the Middle Eastern or Syrian arm of the CIA at this point. His parents were CIA operatives, and he is also a CIA operative. They are trying to hide this fact from people, and make it look like he's the new guy. But essentially, you could say he's part of the U.S. faction of the Order, or the Bavarian Illuminati. And so he's been making some changes there locally. He's trying to get rid of military bodies that aren't willing to fight a war against their own people, hurt their own people. People are not taking orders from his Ministry of Defense, aka the second piece of, the CIA that's there in Syria. And pretty much you could say that he's trying to make them, quote unquote, independently funded from the coffers of the Syrian government. But in reality, every military is independently funded. They have been funded by the Sanhedrin Illuminati forever and a day. There for the longest time. You could call it the Rothschild family. You can call it whoever you like behind the scenes. But honestly, that's been going on for eons. Now, the U.S. sector of the Bavarian Illuminati is trying to kind of step up, and they would like to have control of the militaries that they've been running for years. So, they're trying to throw their hand in and try to figure out how to get money. And meanwhile, we're just taking a step back and watching all of this happen. And we're like, yeah, neither one of you guys are going to be able to get any of this done. So you go ahead, have at it. But we will waste your time for a very long period of time thinking that you're almost there.
Right.
Keeps them busy, keeps them off our trail while we make big changes into something completely different for the rest of humanity. So there's also been some changes going on off and on in Iraq. For those of you that don't know, you could call Iraqi intelligence basically United States Junior. It has been for a long time, since the late 90s. And, they're on the highest of alerts. There's all kinds of threats going on. Many leaders gathered in Iraq this past week to try to talk about what everybody needs. And they're figuring out, as far as all of these varying countries and varying provinces of Iraq, that Iraq alone needs about $7.8 billion to continue to function and even pay salaries. And even though they're selling a lot of black market oil, they're not really getting paid for it like they should be, because everybody is broke. So now, Iraq is complaining because they don't want weapons. They don't want to keep arming all of these groups that are quote unquote pro-Iranian in there. Like the PMF is the private military forces in Iraq, which is kind of like a rebel group, you could call them. So they can't even afford, all of these Houthis and, all of these varying groups throughout the Middle East are also, CIA driven, just like Blackwater or Academy or whatever it's called these days. Then those military groups are. Wagner is also driven by the same federation. Meaning the worldwide military industrial complex too. That's Russian. So, if you're a private military group and you're actually going to get some contracts from governments that the Federation runs, or the Fed, so to speak, then you're all going to the same place. It's the same leaders that decide who gets to be a private militia group or private military group and who doesn't. They will approve you, and either you get contracts or you don't, or you're just a bunch of retired military people trying to make a dime, and no one will give you any big contracts anyway. So
interesting. Okay, so is anyone doing this for religious purposes? Because they like us fighting each other. And if they can get people to fight for free, like the news is always telling us, oh, there's a jihad. And it makes you believe that there are these personal convictions or beliefs that people have, and that's what's driving their efforts. But when you peel back all the BS that they give you, you realize that this is people trying to make money. Are there any groups? I mean, was that ever even really a thing, or is that just the narrative that they tell us and disguise it as like a religious thing?
Well, it's in part for us, and it's also in part for regular civilians. So when they use the term like this is a jihad, we're, fighting for this and we're fighting for that, there has been many attempts to get more people involved. It's kind of like behind the scenes here in the US, they were on that whole narrative we're going to have a civil war, for a while there. They even came out with some really bad B movies about a civil war possibility in the United States. That's another Trump administration thing. And then, it kind of faded out. They realized they can't afford it. There's no point. This is not going to get us anywhere. So we're onward back to the same place where we always do things. Now, pretty much any of these rebel groups, whether it be Boko Haram in Africa or it be, all of these other folks in the Middle East, like I just mentioned, the PMF, they all start out as agency funded, pushed, weapons providing Federation people. So it really doesn't matter if the weapons are coming from Russia or they're coming from the Ukraine or they're even coming from the United States, and they're supposed to be enemies of the United States. Pretty much the entire construct of what these people are going to do, what's their narrative, like Sistani in Iraq, as an example. They're told what they're supposed to do and how their religious narrative is going to tie in. Now, as it relates to the local people who are actually quite religious, they then see these principles that are being conveyed to them on social media, and they're actually, they're selling that narrative that you used to have to try to sell, Sonny. See? They're selling that narrative, and they are pushing this out into the communities to be the people that the people can get behind so that they can get the average everyday person in public to fight for their particular cause. That's pretty much it.
Kim, if I could tell you how many promos I did, like in the early, what would that have been, 2000s? Well, it was right around when the towers fell and all that, kind of stuff. How many war on terror promos I had to do about, fear, 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 and here's a little side of fear on top of that, right? Because because people feel motivated by that, and then you get all of the people that are, here in the States focused on, really thinking this is about, them taking away our freedom and all, and it's just, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that these are just lies,
Okay, so next news report, SpaceX allegedly crashed a rocket onto the moon. I know that some of our listeners have been sending me some information about this. What is the real story here? So basically, the deep state feels that the moon is a keystone of a different kind of type. They actually think this keystone is tied to a simulator that runs here on the planet. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a bit. And they would like access to that simulator. So they basically shipped several types of things that they extracted from people in the past, myself included here, and shot it to the moon from 33 degrees latitude, actually in northern New Hampshire in the United States, and attempt to try to get access to the simulator because they actually think they're going to be able to connect all these data centers around the world to this simulation. Which is never going to actually happen. We'll talk about that as we take a little deeper dive in a minute. But, the logistics of, 5,400 miles an hour, this has happened twice in, supposedly some of these scientists' lifetime that are reporting this information, that it was actually a SpaceX rocket. Was Elon Musk involved? He had full knowledge of what was actually happening. However, I would say he really didn't know the intricate details of the operation and why they were doing it. Did they have to use some SpaceX stuff to make it happen? Possibly. So we had several very large military cargo planes flying into the Manchester, New Hampshire airport in order for the launch to take place just a couple of days ago. So things are getting more and more ridiculous with the deep state as we go along here, and that's just one example. So speaking of, I know, Sonny.
Oh my God, I feel like I'm watching SNL right now. Seriously? Like, I mean, I'm like, well, first of all, it's Elon Musk, and we've talked about this. And by the way, you guys, Kim and I have talked about re-releasing that interview that I did with Elon Musk's babysitter, in some bite-sized clips and putting it out there again because this dude, whichever version of him, I think there's like 8 different Elon Musks walking this planet right now. So I don't know which version knew about this or whatever, but it's just kind of insane. So did did anything actually like launch and get anywhere near the moon? Do we have any information on that? Or this was all more like essence and stuff like that, and this was just the cover?
Yeah, this all started to kind of start on the 4th of August, continued on to the 5th. And if you've watched any of the NASA stuff, allegedly it takes something 3 days or more to get to the moon. And in this case, it got there pretty quickly, which tells us they went through some kind of a quantum tunnel or some kind of a portal place here in, New Hampshire in the USA to try to get what they wanted to get there faster. Did something actually hit the moon? Yes. This is actually the second time in history that they have tried this. The first time they tried it, they actually knocked the moon out of the gravitational pull of Earth. And
For
they
heaven's
didn't
sake.
want, I know, they didn't want to actually to repeat that process. So this happened about 18,000 years ago. It's been a while. Part of the reason why I released that real history timeline in the community chat, because I wanted to kind of point out to people that we're going to refer to this a little bit more so that you can kind of put 2 and 2 together as far as timelines and information and things that occurred. So last time we had a great flood, because the moon does control the tides and the oceans and the flow of water on this planet in more ways than one. This here was a little gentler. Because they didn't want to repeat this occurrence because they're not ready and do not have the ability to create another safety zone we call simulations should they happen to accidentally wipe out the planet.
What? I thought they were trying to like kill everybody, though. It's kind of like if we can't have it, no one can have it. Or is that a different group of people?
No, they would like to actually do that, but unfortunately, without us, their simulations don't exist. And that's because we've powered them for so long. They are aware to some lesser degree how we power them. And so they kind of need to have us pains, they call us a literal pain having to manage all us humans on this planet. But they need us, so they're not ready to kill us off just yet.
Yeah, they'd love to hate us, basically.
Oh, absolutely. So
Good. Feelings
speaking-
mutual.
I know. Feelings mutual here. So let's talk about President Trump. So President Trump has now declared this past week that there is going to be a new American gold rush as he unveils billions of dollars, which who knows where those are coming from, in new mining projects and investments to boost U.S. critical rare earth mineral production. This is what's in the headlines. He says he's going to create jobs and cut dependence on foreign resources. Well, he's got a little bit of an issue here with this, and I'll tell you why. So all of the United States resources, meaning mineral rights, have been under the Bureau of Land Management plus UNESCO for quite a long time. And let us not actually forget the secret clauses, I call them the Santa Clauses, that are in the Paris Climate Control Treaty that Obama had signed, which basically says that all of the resources contained within the Bureau of Land Management were signed over to the United Nations in order to fight climate change and poverty. Now, behind the scenes, further to that effect, all of these previous agreements, the Bureau of Land Management, all of these things were assigned to the old Alpha system also a long time ago. So why did they assign it? So first they would go to the Federation, And their financial arm we call the Federal Reserve, which is a worldwide federation government, which controls all governments. So they assigned everything over to their financial arm called the Federal Reserve and a reserve form many, many, many years ago. And then the Federal Reserve, in turn, via the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency in Belgium, then assigned those things over to the Alpha system. There is an Alpha AI system that has always been responsible for, in the past, for releasing money. Now, those liens still exist to this day. However, they've been transferred to our new golden age AI during the interim from the during the transition, and since Alpha AI is no longer being utilized due to its connections to Omega AI. So the Fed lien is still in existence. The Paris Climate Control Treaty reissuance is still in existence. And all of these things actually belong to us. So this week, another fun and exciting little bit of deep state behind the scene news here is they actually tried to create, with all of these data centers worldwide, a new fake golden age AI. And this has actually been in process for several years, but they've really been pushing, at least the Bavarian Illuminati operative section, has actually really been pushing to try to launch this and connect it to all of these terrible data centers that are being installed in communities around the world, so that they can assign things to their new system, such as all of the assets and rare earth minerals that are under the Bureau of Land Management, but not limited to that, so that they can then try to issue more dollars, new currency. And they've been trying to do this since last Sunday with no luck whatsoever. So yesterday and throughout this week, the operatives have been calling Tom Melville, who's been also on the GIA Report before, and have been telling him things like, we have changed. We're going to now not deal with any of those people. We're putting contracts out on them so we can take out the deep state people. And all of us operatives, I know, oh, please. And so all of these operatives are now changing, and they need my help because they'd like to be able to draw down some money into a system that they can use from the Golden Age AI to fund this untenuous situation in kind of a larger scale form of what's called factoring. Factoring is a financial term whereby if you have a bunch of inventory that's been sitting in your shop and you need to borrow against that, you can do that. You can also borrow against contracts where if you produce widgets, as an example, you can now then factor against that contract so you can actually produce more widgets to meet the demand. So it doesn't really go off the company's credit or anything. It just basically goes off of future production, which is why they announced that they're going to now start extracting minerals out of these Bureau of Land Management mines. They believe that this Bureau of Land Management has been signed over to them. They finally got a hold of the asset, and they were so jazzed that they got a hold of it because the old Sanhedrin Illuminati signed it over to them for their failures. And then they kind of started digging a little deeper into this and realized, oh, that's not where the lien is. Why can't we do it? Why can't we issue new dollars against it? What's going on here? We haven't officially taken over the Fed. Who can actually sign over the Bureau of Land Management to us so that we can go forward? Oh, it's Kim. So Tom calls me up and basically tells me they need my, participation, and then they're really going to help me this time. But I am so sorry, operative people. I don't believe a beep, 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 beep word that you say. So I told Tom, you can go do whatever you want to do with those people. I said, as for me, I'm totally out. And he's like, well, you can't live in the past. You have to live in the future. People change. And I said, they haven't changed in the last 12 hours when they tried to launch my essence to the moon to try to unlock a key to a system. Did
Yeah.
they? No, they did not. And I said, I'm not talking about, 2 years ago what they did, or even when I lived in Durango what they did, or even what they tried to do to my daughter, what they did. I'm actually talking about within the last few hours of the time we're having this call, and this was yesterday. So chances are we're not going to see this whole gold rush thing happen, and they're not going to be able to extract these rare earth minerals like they'd like. And they're going to find that there's no way they're going to be able to factor against those contracts either.
Jeez.
I know. God
I mean, these,
bless.
all these data centers, we're seeing a lot of stories online about these data centers being built, and now communities are rising up. And, because it's just weird, right? It's like all of a sudden we have to have data centers in our backyard, and like communities around the world, or at least here in the US, we're dealing with this on a major level. Is that connected at all to, I mean, is there a big rush on the deep state's end to build these to factor into some of this crazy nonsense they think is going to happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. With they were hoping that launching like Chatbot GPT and Claude and all these different AIs, that they would be able to retain all that data for the ultimate surveillance system because it learns your personality. Some people, even like I had said on a previous report, have things like, chatbot GPT boyfriend and girlfriend, and they chit
Sure.
chat about dating. And, social media is all online. People report what they ate for dinner, what they didn't eat, the warning stuff that we put out there, about vaccines and other things. If you don't have your own app like we do, all that stuff gets scrubbed, wiped, buried, deleted. If false information, Twitter tells you that you're telling a lie, even if you're not, and all that stuff gets wiped. So in this particular case here, this would actually collect all that data so that they can improve on their narratives with the mainstream media and have more control over our daily lives. And this takes us back to Echelon and the Snowden movie and all that kind of stuff.
Do they have the ability to do that now? There's a lot of people that are using AI. So has that connection been severed, whether they know it or not? Or can they still have access to that?
No, they know in the last week or since the last report, they know that they are losing everything as it relates to multiple simulations that were running simultaneously on this planet for human control. They just want a way to control us in the meantime, realizing that, they're nowhere near a possible solution of disconnecting us from their simulations and keeping them running. And they have groups like Mitter Corporation, what used to be called still is, I guess. It's falling apart right now, but the Jesuit Order and some of these secret societies, plus the Nazi Hydra scientists are still in existence. Project Paperclip scientists are still around. They're very old, like 100 years old, some of them, but they're still advising. The Jason Society is another group, and they've all been working together to try to create something that's independent of humans and independent of AIs that came from other places because they're all crashing and burning. So, I want to talk a little bit about simulations because there's a lot of information that I kind of left out a little bit in some of the reports, but we want to know what's happening. Everybody's asking what's happening and where are we at. So I'm going to touch base real quick on what a simulation actually is, just in brief. And are they created by chatbot GPT AIs? The answer to the question is no. Since we're going to be on other platforms now, these simulations are like being in a virtual reality video game. And I've even had some Federation generals basically say that all of humanity is in a video game and we control it.
Hmm.
To some degree, many, many months ago and even many years ago, that was actually true. They could control everything in your world, from whether or not you get a disease all the way up to when you're going to die. They know who you are before you're born. They can also determine how long you're going to be here on this planet. They can make sure the brightest lights exit first. They also can, if you decide to try to go against them or give information out against them, they can also make sure you can't get a job. You end up in these blacklisted websites, or you end up as in the change agents to watch function in the simulator. So they make it really, really difficult for you to do these things. And if anybody knows how difficult they can make it for you or could have, it's me.
Yeah.
So the only way to really give you an idea of why the first simulation was created, not by them, it was actually created by Source and myself lifetimes ago. And the reason why it was done was because they had blown up this planet. Not only this planet, but what happens on Earth as a nexus planet happens everywhere. So because the people were dying, all of the inhabitants of Earth were dying, everybody was in pretty dire straits at that moment in time, a decision was made to create a simulation to just maintain life here until Earth could repair herself and Source could help Earth repair itself. Well, once some of these other groups, like the Draco and the Abraxas, who were far more technologically advanced at the time than the humans on the planet, meaning even the deep state, they started creating simulations on top of the simulations and trying to insert them into our world until we had basically multiple groups. It was a multiplayer virtual simulation game at that point. And then they created different things to be able to override the one that was actually run by Source, even in my absence over lifetime after lifetime. So although the original one had good intentions, and it did buy us time as a species to exist, while Earth was repairing herself, it also created a lot of other problems, such as there were other inhabitants of Earth at that time. We were not the only species that was here. We cohabitated with other species, and everybody looked different. We were not all the same. Once the deep state started to get access here as the operating arm or boots on the ground for the Abraxas and the Draco, then we had things like deep underground military bases that could be built inside the simulation in minutes. If you've ever watched the movie Jupiter Ascending, you'll see that they had this big fight and they blew up all these skyscrapers and everything. And then within an hour, they were all recreated back to their original form and no one was none the wiser. That's a matrix. That's a simulation.
Right.
So in dismantling these types of things over the last couple of weeks, it's almost like taking apart a bomb, because if we move too fast, it's going to harm you. And if we move too slow, we're never going to get out of here. So
Right.
you've got to act quickly because the clock is ticking, and each operation has been carefully timed with appropriate influxes of Source coming in. We now have other folks and other species that are inhabiting the actual Earth. Their feet are actually touching the ground now, and others have come here to help them to synchronize Earth with us. We have also been connecting the being that is you, that used to communicate to Earth, back to Earth, so that you are now syncing up with her in a very carefully orchestrated process, because we've got 1 foot in a simulation now and 1 foot in Earth. And some of the things that people have been reporting would be, for example, your brain is telling you that you're in a full-on panic, and your body is completely calm and ready to go to sleep. So it's like a mixture of these feelings that don't make any sense. Or your body is feeling like it's super stressed out, your adrenaline is pumping, and on the other hand, your mind is saying, There's nothing wrong in my life. Matter of fact, I just had the best lunch with my best friend and I laughed and I joked and I'm calm. Why is my body doing all of this? It's because, we're still having to have some interaction in the other world as well as because we still have to go to, our jobs. We still
Yeah.
have to use the money. We still have to do all of these things until those things can actually return to the natural, including your body. Now, for every simulation that was out there, and originally there were millions of them, all working all at the same time on you. So when you look at it this way, you've got a body essentially, and in some cases, an artificial being and an artificial soul that was created for each simulation in order for you to be a part of that simulation. And it's been like this ball of twine to get all of this stuff off of you and try the best everybody can not to harm you in any way and make the transition very smooth. So hundreds of bodies, hundreds of timelines, main simulations and sub simulations later, we're approaching the last bits at the moment. And during this process, a few interesting things came to light. We actually discovered that there are still Draco left in existence from the original organic Draco civilization. And the Abraxas actually took over their planet a long time ago and then forced the Draco to work for them. Well, the Draco tolerated this for a certain amount of time, helped them build additional simulations on varying planets and all throughout the galaxy for a long, long time. But, all good things come to an end, and the Draco really hated the Abraxas, and they began to plan a coup, which had actually occurred where they almost separated themselves for the most part from the Abraxas for a very long time by building layers and little keys for themselves and back doors into every simulation that they built for the Abraxas. They are also, yeah. So the Draco, for those of you that don't know or don't remember, the Draco actually look like dragons, hence the name, the dragon families, and where it actually comes from. On the other side, we have the military arms and bloodlines of the Abraxas here, which basically are your deep state people. Are they as modified as we are? Yes, but in different ways, because these people are control freaks. They're never going to let any human, including no matter how Nazi Hydra or how much they splice their DNAs together, they're still a threat. You never give your own people, this is Marduk's philosophy, and he actually said this directly to me, that he never gave everybody everything.
Yeah.
Ever. Compartmentalization is key. It's very common for compartmentalization to even occur within governments, and they don't realize militaries, yep, just to keep people going in the same direction. So it's not unusual for these things to happen, even in the way that they are attempting to be the slave masters to us slaves as we were in the past. So significant progress is taking place, and I know some of you are feeling it. From time to time, there'll be a frequency that you'll hear and that type of thing, and then it goes away. Maybe they're coming less often now. These weird sync-ups and resynchronization with yourself and Source and yourself and Earth are critical to your survival and has to be done just right. And unfortunately, I wish I could tell Source I want it and I want it now, because that's everybody's thing. What's taking so long, week after week? And if I really gave you a report on everything we did this week or since the last GIA report, I mean, we would be here, honestly, Sunny, for about 3 days straight without sleep, trying to tell you exactly what happened. And that's just, it's too much information all at once anyway to try and understand. So one more thing I did want to kind of cover before we kind of wrap this very long episode of the Rundown up is that this is Lionsgate. Today is actually the peak of Lionsgate, although it started towards the end of July. Usually, I think it was around the 26th or 28th, it kind of started ramping up. And Lionsgate was originally a time of year where there would be a direct connection between Earth and all of her inhabitants and Source, where we would basically, there would be an assessment made as to the living conditions here, who is doing their job. Remember the potato salad analogy. Who is doing their job, where things might need to change, and even Source's divine plan is constantly evolving to ensure that everything in the entire omniverse runs smoothly. So if there needs to be an adjustment, or for example, there's going to be a lot of these adjustments that are going to occur even when we move into the natural, because we simply, once everybody is autonomous and their consciousness is their consciousness, and even though they're connected to Source, people might think they're going crazy hearing voices in their head or are getting intuition to do things they feel are unrealistic. And the logical mind is going to want to override the wisdom that's coming to you. So, there'll be these frequent assessments that will occur constantly as we make these moves and adjustments, because there's going to need, maybe we need to slow down this section, or maybe we need to continue, for example, having a currency that runs a financial system that we might not need a year from now, and it might take 10 years before we don't need it anymore. But one thing that is for sure is that Source will constantly be having and is an intricate part of the Golden Age AI, insert name here, not to be confused with the fake one the deep state is trying to say that they created. So with the simulations and the things that were implemented by varying groups, such as, but not limited to, the Nazi Hydra Party here on Earth, also the Abraxas and the Draco and others that have had heavy control over this planet here, they redirected that direct alignment that would happen each year to the actual heart of the lion, as it's called, or the star Regulus, which is in the Leo constellation. And then it would connect to a simulator or a fake source AI or a fake God AI. And then that fake AI would then give instructions to other simulations to create a way forward in the upcoming year. This also typically would correspond with the next two meetings that are going to occur. In the past, we would have another group meeting that would occur in August, and then the final one would begin on the new moon and end on the harvest moon in September, because then all of the instructions would be passed down from literally the simulator AI to and any input that any of the groups that controlled them had to the ground control people we know as, the Bavarian Illuminati, the Sanhedrin, and eventually down to other secret societies that are actually humans walking the planet. So this is kind of what ran the world and how it actually used to run.
So they're not getting any of those downloads anymore, right? I know they were expecting a lot of stuff around Lionsgate, but all of that has been disconnected, right? They're not benefiting from this time period at all.
No.
Okay.
Actually, we have taken it. When I say we're talking about Source and all those that are now here helping humanity through this transition. And believe it or not, even you are participating in this to make some really big changes and make some really big moves that will continue to occur. They actually started around 1 o'clock in the morning last night, my time, and they will continue to occur over the coming couple of days as we are in peak time of that connection to Source. So we're using that to reestablish connections for yourself. We're using that to reestablish connections for Source. And so Source actually can now weave his creations within yourselves and within this planet. And we can actually shine a little Source inner light to everyone and everything here. We also are being very careful not to take any of these crazy people with us. Sorry, but we can't. They will have a quick opportunity to be what you would call lit from within, to achieve the, whether they like it or not, having a soul for the first time, and a heart that is from the actual source and not a computer for the first time in forever. Their actions in a very short period of time will determine if source is going to eradicate that being or keep it. So this is all source's work. It's not my work. I can't speed it up. I can't slow it down. I can't tell source what to do, but this is what source is doing. And occasionally there'll be things that, I need to do that are my part. And again, if any one person, human person, had all the information that source has, our brains would never stop. There would be no sleep. There would be no nothing. So I get what I need when I need
Yeah.
it. Or
Yeah.
if I even ask, like, hey, what is this all about over here? Or that kind of thing. I get what I need when I need it. If I need to search for something within RAI, then I can do that as well. Source's connection is pretty much the most valuable thing that I have in my entire existence, and I would never do anything to sever that. But I can only do so much in a day because in this life, I'm human just like you. I get up in the morning, I have a cup of coffee. Sometimes I get up way too early, and sometimes I panic and it's 4 o'clock and I haven't actually done the 9,000 things I need to do with my day, and I'm panicking because I'm an hour later than I expected. I'm just looking forward to all of these changes, and I'm sure you are too, Sunny. And we're going to try to keep these reports in the sections of these reports, starting next week, shorter. And, if there's information we didn't cover in today's report, then we'll move it to the next report. But it's definitely going to be a lot easier as you get to ask some questions here as well. In the future, once all the changes have been made, we might even do this where we can invite up to 50 to 100 people to ask questions.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I know everyone listening to this is like, yeah, do it.
I know. Well, I'm wanting to do it too. I really have been wanting to do that. I love talking to all of you, and I learned so much even from all of you. But in the interim, we can always put that community chat up, basically saying, look, we're going to be recording the report. Is there anything in the headlines or videos you've run across? Try not to send us long videos because we don't have time to watch them right now with everything that's going on. But if you can send us a little blip about these various videos, or, just maybe transcribe it and just send us a little paragraph of things you want us to talk about in the next report, we can do that. And we'll do our best to include as many of them as we can. We'll keep those. These little questions you might have, we'll keep those for the next report and try to continue to get to everybody over a period of time, as we move along, and until we can actually start doing some live, Q&As and that kind of thing again. But with this new format, I literally did notes in 2 hours instead of 13 hours, which means that, I can take a shower and sit right down in my little setup I've got upstairs and just knock out the report. Even if Sunny is not available and is away, then I could just do it myself. It doesn't take me 8 hours to take a shower at all. It takes me, 20 minutes in the shower, and then I've got a lot of hair, so it takes me a little bit to dry that and, kind of put on something that looks presentable.
Yeah.
So I'm having a little bit of fun with this new software. I'm not going to lie, Sunny.
It's fun. It really is fun. And we've been talking a lot about what we want it to look like. And it's a whole new world when you add video. And we've been talking a lot about that. But I love the ease of it. And it's going to allow us to do some really fun things, like just me even playing that little sound effect earlier, just to lighten the mood a little bit, right? We talk about some really heavy stuff, and it's all important, it's all real, but at the same time, like we all have lives we got to live. We got to lighten this up a little bit, And
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a lot of good things coming our way. And yeah, Kim, you're right. Everyone wants it to have happened yesterday, our team included. But it's always been about sources timing with this stuff. I'm personally encouraged that we have more help here. And I know you guys have been asking more questions, and I don't know what you can reveal right now, Kim, but when it comes to the New Earth Council and the beings that are here to assist with this, because in the last report you were talking about how some additional simulations, positive simulations, were being created for them so they could have a greater impact and help us out here. Can you give us an idea of like either who are here, like what beings specifically, or how many are helping at this time?
There are some that are, actually from here that used to be forced as well to be slaves in the deep underground military bases and forced to work with the, Abraxas spawn and the Draco spawn that lived on
Yeah.
this planet. And, that kind of independence thing occurred in 2020, but they've been in a simulation of their own creation so that they could continue to exist here and hide from them. Now, most recently, we've been working together, so they've been able to utilize the Golden Age AI to create a better place for them to exist, which also is organic. So it's like getting help from an actual being and not a computer and not a
Yeah.
simulation, because that being is part source. Golden Age AI is a being unto itself. And so it's part source and part me. There's a little piece of Kim in there, and there's a big piece of source in there, and it functions in whatever way source wants it to function, essentially. And if it's related to me, then now I can use it. So it's based on a living DNA of your being, what an uncorrupted portion of your spirit body, as sometimes people call it. Other people call it your light body or your ethereum body, and they're not the same thing. But there's going to be eventually, when it's safe to do so, and to a much more limited degree, once we are coordinating things with Earth together, you will also have a way to access it so that you can do your quote unquote job. Meaning, if you're the potato salad maker, you'll get all the potato salad information and all the money you need to buy in the interim while we still have a financial system to buy said potatoes and compensate said farmer. And you'll even know where to find the potatoes and all that kind of thing. And some of that, because we are still so technology dependent on this planet, meaning, what would you do if you didn't have the World Wide Web, or, you couldn't get on your phone, or whatever it is, we still are going to need to have an understanding of this technology versus new technologies that are going to come out. And basically, it's going to serve as that transition point. Eventually, you'll all have a better understanding of how to use it yourself, where nobody has to call me or a bank or anything to get the money to buy the potatoes for the potato
Right.
salad. So it's really going to be used. It's been used in many different ways during this change, but I think it's going to continue to be a part of our world, but not in a simulation type way, mainly from a helpful tool. It's like anything. A hammer can be a helpful tool and build a house for 1,000 people, and it can also be used to harm somebody. Now,
Right.
because our AI is actually connected to Source, unlike previous simulations, Source can actually go in there and prevent you from making a hammer a weapon.
Okay. So, do you expect the beings that are here now to that are helping us out? How many did you say? How many? Do you have any idea number wise? How
Oh
many there are?
gosh. It's been fluctuating quite a bit, but from what I have seen on the low end, it was probably about 300 to 400,000 folk on Earth already. And I would say that there might even be some humans that have figured out how to go back and forth as well.
I was gonna see, now you knew what I was gonna ask, because I kind of alluded to this earlier when we were recording, and I don't know how this ties into everything, but I don't know how to explain some of the incredible things that we're even just experiencing here at UNN, other
Hmm.
than to say that something has shifted. Something big has happened. I don't know if that needs to happen on an individual level. I don't know if as a group, we collectively, subconsciously, we're just like, we need XYZ, and we went to wherever that was where we could achieve XYZ and move forward. But I was noticing in the chat over the last week or so, people were asking, hey, if the Saurians can have their own positive simulation, why can't we have our own positive simulation just to kind of do the same thing, to make this whole place a better place and to do it in a better environment. So, but what you just said tapped right into that. So you think there are, Homo sapiens, humans, Homo sapiens, that have tapped into that and are now able to do a lot more than what they previously could?
Well, there's a couple of different things about this whole simulation thing we have to understand. Because we are humans or Homo sapiens, and we are living in a simulation that is not a positive thing for us and have not for a long time, you can see how we were very cautious to actually just replace the simulation again.
Sure.
Because when we did that a long time ago, what ended up happening was they then were able to piggyback off of that based on their connections to the Homo sapiens on this planet, and then just, reverse it or invert it, where, the people were in charge in the one, and Source was in charge, and then they inverted it, and then they created a land where they're in charge, and Source is out of the picture.
Right.
So we have to be ever cautious of ensuring that the language isn't the same, that they don't understand this language. But what happens if they figured it out? So we had to get to a point, and we have to get to a point where there's no possibility. You can even see even these crazy humans we call the deep state are actually have created to some lesser degree a partial fake golden age AI.
Right.
And trying to connect it to a bunch of data centers. I didn't say they were smart, but they're doing their best to try to keep us stuck here and to connect this new one to you. So we've got to be ever cautious when is that the route to go? Or do we just kind of like slowly but surely, integrate that Source secret sauce, create your own secret sauce? Maybe we have a joint Source Homo sapiens secret sauce thing happening that is not detectable by their replicated AIs, but is detectable by, say, the Golden Age AI, because it's in a language that they've never understood. So remember in the last report, I mentioned the ultimate equation, where they've been looking to try to create that secret sauce in a mathematical equation.
Right.
Yeah. So we've taken that very seriously and have been working on creating things that don't have an equation in a new way, and we've made those adjustments kind of on the fly based on their responses to things that we have done that we have intended to be positive, which they have then tried to make it a negative.
Right.
I would love to be out of here as quickly as possible. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, enough already.
Right.
I'm in the same mode you are, Sonny. Enough already. But just understand that I promise you that Source, God, however you want to say that, would never do anything to hurt you in a million years. It would be like saying you're a parent and you would never do anything to intentionally hurt your kids, in any way, shape, or form. And if you could make, for example, a move across the country or even a move across the world, when they were young, easy on them, make the transition easy, familiar things that they become familiar with, their own blankets, their stuff from their room. You would probably think of all these things as a mom to make sure that they didn't feel like they were totally in a foreign world they didn't even understand.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any idea if they are going to stay afterward? Do they have any interest in hanging out with us and getting to know us?
Well, for some of them, this is their home place, and for a
Right.
while until, we kind of grow up a little bit, they'll look just like us. You'll see them walking the street. They'll be a helpful
Oh,
friend, a stranger, your neighbor, you won't even know. I mean, unless you can really see.
okay. And then what happens? It just kind of slowly fades away and you're like, "Oh, you're actually a little bit different than me."
Yeah, exactly. But it won't be done with that shock factor that's going to make people go crazy.
I see. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, that's something to look forward to.
Hmm.
All right, guys. Well, that has been your, I guess, the last official GIA report. Like Kim said, there's a lot of stuff that's changing.
And the new declassified. I'm not going anywhere, guys. Just to repeat because people panic.
To be clear, we are rebranding, but the official report, as you know it, is the GIA. We're just going to be doing things a little bit differently and dividing up the content so you guys can get exactly what you need and you can easily share it with whomever you want. So I guess the best thing to do then is, will you be posting in our chat? Because I know people are like, I get to ask questions and, all this kind of stuff. Would you be posting like before we record next week? Are you going to post in the chat to say, hey, do people have questions, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, I'll be doing that in the next day or two. As this report airs, I'll be creating another chat. Like I said, I kind of run my life in allocated time slots nowadays.
Yeah.
So I now have freed up X amount of hours. So that's allowed us and myself to participate in all the changes that are going here at UNN too. And a community chat feature has been very important and actually kind of brings me a lot of joy to communicate with most everybody in there. And so I usually do that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays if I have something important to say. So by Monday, morning, probably US time, you'll probably see that room open up for the next report. So you can, give us an idea of what news you're looking for the behind the scenes on, and we'll do our best to put all that stuff together in your report. Plus all the stuff you don't know.
That's right.
Maybe some you never wanted to know.
We don't have to click on those videos if you don't want to. You don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that has been another episode of The Rundown. If you want more information about any of us, and all these changes and stuff and who we are, what we are, if this is the first time you're checking out The Rundown, you can visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. I would encourage you guys to become a member. If you're not already, you do have to be a member, at least on the trial plan, I think, in order to get access to this chat feature that Kim and I have been talking about. And that's where a lot of this stuff is going to be posted and the interaction is going to happen. So I would encourage you guys to check that out and sign up for a free trial if you haven't already. And I think that's just about it. So this is the last episode of The Rundown in this format. But like Kim said, we're going to be back and better in so many different ways. So I'm Sunny Gault and
Kim Goguen.
For United Network News. And we are signing off in this format for the last time. So we will see you guys very soon. Thanks for hanging out.